You open your laptop to write one email. Instead, you refresh the same three apps for the 10th time, then check a fourth one for good measure. You know exactly what you should be doing, and yet your hands keep drifting somewhere else entirely. Now strip away the desk, the Wi-Fi, the guilt. Picture an early tribesman by a dying fire staring at a cracked spear he needs to fix before dawn. He is not lazy. He is frozen, hands shaking, doing anything except the one task that keeps him alive. If that sounds uncomfortably familiar, stick around, because ancient human logic is where your worst habits finally make sense. So why does your brain treat a spreadsheet like a predator in the dark? The answer rewrites everything you were taught about willpower, and it starts inside a skull that is still running ancient software. For decades, procrastination was called laziness, a character flaw, bad time management, something to simply push through with more discipline. New research says all of that is completely wrong. Procrastination is not about time at all. It is your brain running an emotional escape plan, one built for a world with teeth and claws, not deadlines. To understand it, you have to go back to the oldest argument your skull has ever hosted. Deep in the brain sits an ancient control center, wired purely for immediate safety and immediate reward. Call it the animal brain because it does not plan, it only reacts. Now imagine a small hunting band deciding whether to cross an open plain at dusk. The animal brain does not weigh long-term food supply against risk. It screams one message. Something might be watching you, retreat now. That single reflex, fast and blunt, kept early humans breathing long enough to have children. Imagine the tension in that moment, wind shifting, grass moving without a clear cause. Every second of hesitation could mean the difference between a safe camp and no camp at all. The alarm system doesn't ask permission, it simply floods the body and demands retreat. Muscles tighten, breathing quickens. Focus narrows to a single question. Is this safe or not? That reaction happened thousands of times across a single lifetime, sharpening into pure instinct. Layered on top of that ancient alarm system sits a second, newer command post. This one handles planning, patience, and imagining tomorrow before it happens. It is slower, it takes effort, and unlike the alarm system, you have to switch it on yourself. Think of two tribe elders, one shouting, "Run," the other quietly saying, "Wait, let's think." The quiet elder can weigh whether the herd will still be there next season, whether a longer route saves lives. But the quiet elder only speaks up if someone deliberately asks for their opinion first. Most of your day is a negotiation between those two voices, and the alarm system usually wins first. It wins first because it is faster, louder, and it never needs to be switched on manually. Here is the translation beat that matters. That ancient alarm still fires for a blinking cursor the same way it once fired for rustling grass. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a scary task and a physical threat. When you face a hard report, your body treats it like a predator crouched in the tree line. Stress hormones flood your system, your palms sweat, your stomach tightens, exactly like it would on an ancient trail. And just like on that trail, your first instinct is to flee toward anything safer. Scrolling a feed is the modern equivalent of ducking behind a rock. New mystery. If fleeing kept your ancestors alive, why does fleeing wreck your career now? The answer lives in a tiny chemical messenger most people completely misunderstand. You have been told this chemical is about pleasure. It is actually about anticipation, the promise of a reward, not the reward itself. Picture a forager spotting a berry bush across a ravine. Their mouth waters, their pace quickens, long before a single berry is anywhere near their hands. That rising pull is the chemical doing its job, dragging attention toward possible reward. The surge of anticipation hits before a single berry touches their tongue, pulling their feet toward the risk. Notice something important: the reward itself barely matters compared to the promise of it. That is exactly why checking a phone feels irresistible even when nothing new is usually there. That same surge fires today when you simply imagine unlocking your phone. For some brains, this anticipation system runs on a hair trigger, making small, safe rewards feel louder than big, distant ones. A message notification feels like a guaranteed berry bush. A project due in 3 weeks feels like a ravine with no bridge. So the ancient forager instinct chooses the guaranteed berries every single time. There is a second chemical worth understanding, one built for urgency rather than temptation. This one primes muscles and focus for sudden action, the kind needed when danger is close. Imagine that same tribe finally spotting smoke on the horizon, storm rolling in fast. Children get gathered, tools get grabbed. Nobody debates whether the danger is real anymore. The body simply commits because hesitation now costs more than acting imperfectly. Suddenly, indecision disappears, bodies move, decisions happen in seconds. That is the exact chemical rush many people wait for before starting a deadline. The translation beat: you are not lazy for needing panic to move you, your body is copying an ancient emergency response built for real storms. Deadlines create artificial storms, so your ancient urgency system finally kicks the door open, even when no real danger exists at all. But that system was never meant to be summoned every single night of your life. But relying on manufactured panic comes at a cost your ancestors never had to pay nightly. There is a metabolic price to switching from rest into effort. Your brain quite literally burns extra energy pushing past that first wall of resistance. Picture how much harder it is for a resting body to suddenly sprint from danger than to already be moving. A body curled up by the fire needs a real jolt of energy just to stand and start running. Starting cold from stillness takes a jolt no different than that first sprint. That jolt is why the hardest part of any task is always the very first minute, never the middle, never the end. Once movement begins, momentum carries the body far more easily than the stillness ever led on. Not every stalling tribe member stalled for the same reason, and neither do you. Recent research from a major university mapped out 9 distinct patterns of avoidance, and most people carry 2 or 3 at once. One archetype delays because nothing ever feels finished enough to release. Another delays because dreaming about the outcome feels better than the grinding steps required to reach it. A third freezes under a flood of worst-case scenarios before they even begin. A fourth resists simply because being told what to do feels like losing control over their own time. A fifth constantly jumps between half-started projects, completing almost nothing. A sixth chases whatever feels good right now with no thought for later consequences. A seventh deliberately waits for the deadline rush because calm focus never seems to arrive otherwise. An eighth assumes failure is coming anyway, so starting early feels pointless. A ninth has simply run out of mental fuel, and stalling is the only symptom left showing. Translation beat: none of these are moral failures, they are ancient survival strategies misapplied to a world with no ravines left to cross. New mystery: why does a deadline 3 weeks away feel less real than one due tomorrow? The answer involves a strange psychological trick your brain plays on time itself. Humans naturally value a smaller reward right now over a much larger reward later. Picture an early tribe choosing between eating 1 fish today or storing 3 fish for a week from now. Hunger, danger, and unpredictable weather made later a gamble nobody could bank on. A stored fish could rot, get stolen, or simply never get eaten if the group had to flee overnight. Waiting could mean losing everything to a rival group or a spoiled catch. In that world, the only reward guaranteed to exist was the one already in your hands. So the ancient mind trained itself to grab certainty immediately and discount anything distant. That same discounting reflex is why a due date in a month feels almost imaginary. Here is where it gets stranger and almost uncomfortable to sit with. Brain scans show that when people picture their future self, activity looks like they are picturing a total stranger. Your brain genuinely treats the person who will suffer the missed deadline as someone else's problem. Imagine handing your unfinished chores to a total stranger from another tribe and walking away guilt-free. You would feel almost nothing because their exhaustion tomorrow was never truly yours to carry today. That is essentially what your mind does every time you push a task onto tomorrow's version of you. The version of you who has to pull an all-nighter still shares your face, your name, your memories. But to the ancient alarm system focused only on right now, that future person barely registers as real. Translation beat: the guilt you feel later isn't overreaction. It's your ancient mind finally meeting the stranger it abandoned. For roughly 1 in 5 people, this whole struggle runs even deeper, tangled with executive differences in the brain. Their minds struggle to filter background noise, every notification landing like a snapped twig in the forest. Imagine a lookout who cannot tell a real predator from a falling leaf, exhausted by constant false alarms. By midday, that lookout has no energy left for the actual predator because every leaf demanded the same reaction. That describes what constant notifications do to an easily overwhelmed nervous system, draining focus long before real work even starts. There is also a distortion in sensing how much time has actually passed. Picture navigating by sun position alone, only the sky is constantly randomly changing speed. 10 minutes can feel like an hour, and an hour can vanish like 10 minutes, with no reliable marker to trust. Planning a journey becomes nearly impossible when your own internal clock keeps lying to you. Newer approaches for this pattern rely on working near another person, borrowing their calm focus like a fire shared between two shelters. Small friction tools that force a pause before opening a distracting app also help, like a quiet elder blocking the path for one breath. Translation beat. Needing outside structure was never weakness. Ancient tribes survived precisely because no one carried every burden alone. So how do you actually work with this ancient wiring instead of fighting it? The first strategy shrinks the size of the thread itself. Don't tell your brain to write the whole report. Tell it to open the page and type one sentence. A small task never triggers the alarm system the way a massive one does. Picture a hunter facing an enormous animal choosing instead to track one small, manageable footprint first. One footprint feels survivable. One entire beast feels like certain danger, even though both lead to the same outcome eventually. Shrinking the target stops the ancient alarm from sounding at all. The second strategy involves forgiving your past delays instead of punishing them. New research confirms that shame does not fix procrastination, it deepens it. Picture a tribe elder mocking a nervous young hunter before their next attempt. Shame doesn't sharpen focus, it floods the system with more of the very stress that caused the freeze. A frightened hunter mocked in front of the fire freezes harder, not braver, the next time danger appears. Self-compassion quiets the alarm long enough for the newer planning center to finally speak. The third strategy automates decisions before the moment of temptation even arrives. Simple if-then plans, like deciding in advance exactly when a task begins, remove the ancient brain's ability to negotiate in the moment. Picture a tribe agreeing at sunrise exactly when they leave for the river. No debate once the sun moves. Nobody stands around arguing at the water's edge because the decision was already settled hours earlier in calmer minds. Removing the decision removes the opportunity for the alarm system to hijack it in the heat of the moment. The plan does the thinking in advance, so panic has nothing left to negotiate later. The fourth strategy matches the tool to the specific trigger causing the freeze. Not every ancient threat called for the same response, and not every modern trigger does either. Some people need a hard wall between themselves and distraction entirely, something as blunt as sealing off an escape route. Others need quiet company working nearby, borrowing calm the way a nervous hunter borrows courage from the group beside him. A visual map of the hours ahead can work like reading the position of the sun across a familiar sky. Still others need one deliberate breath forced between impulse and action, a pause as small as checking the wind before stepping into the open. None of these tools are cheats, they are modern shelters built for an ancient mind that still expects real danger around every corner. None of these four strategies require willpower because willpower was never the missing ingredient to begin with. They simply speak to your ancient mind in a language it has always understood: safety, certainty, and small, manageable steps. Which brings us to the real realization hiding underneath all of this science. Every time you avoid a task, you are not broken. You are running code written for survival on open plains and dark forests. The same instinct that once saved your ancestors from starvation and predators now misfires at inboxes and deadlines. Your ancient mind was never built to understand a due date, only a sunset. It was built to protect a body walking through real danger every single day. That protective system kept enough humans alive long enough to raise children who eventually built cities, calendars, and inboxes. Every time you forgive yourself for stalling, you are simply speaking the language your ancient mind has always understood. Every small step you force yourself to take is a quiet negotiation between two very old voices inside your skull. You are not malfunctioning, you're remembering. If this changed how you see your own procrastination, subscribe to Ancient Human Logic for more.